Why would she adopt you? They said it like it was a joke, like it was obvious, like I didn't belong, and maybe back then I believed them. My name is Lena, and I'm 41 now. But this story doesn't start with who I am. It starts with who they said I'd never be. I was 9 years old the first time I realized what being chosen really meant. Not in the fairy tale way either. It meant being looked at like a charity case, whispered about in the kitchen, excluded from cousin sleepovers, and asked if I was help or family. Because when you're adopted, especially late, especially into a family that never wanted you, people like to remind you, constantly. Sometimes it's subtle, like a tilted smile when they ask where you're really from. Other times, it's a dagger straight to your heart, like at my aunt's birthday party when my cousin Sarah loudly asked, "So, is she your real mom now?" Everyone laughed. Everyone except Martha, the woman who adopted me. She put her arm around me and said something that stayed with me for life. "She's as real as it gets, and she's mine." Martha was in her late 50s when she took me in, a retired school teacher, widowed young, and the only person who had ever looked at me like I mattered, not like a burden or a mistake. She had kind eyes, stiff gray curls, and a stubborn streak that made people both love her and stay out of her way. When she adopted me, it wasn't for show. It wasn't out of pity. It was because she wanted me. Me. But the rest of the family, they made it clear I was an outsider, an intruder in their precious bloodline. Even as a child, I saw the way they flinched when I called Martha Mom, the forced smiles, the tense dinners, the little snide remarks. "You don't have to call her that, sweetie." I mean, legally, sure, but one day I overheard Sarah whispering to her mother, "She's only doing it so she won't die alone. That girl's gonna steal everything one day." I was 11, and I stopped eating for almost a week. But Martha noticed. She always noticed. She sat me down on the floral couch in our living room, took both my hands and said, "You are not a guest in my life, Lena. You are the reason I'm still living it." Even now, I can't repeat that sentence without choking up. I grew up in that house, 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors that creaked with every step, and a porch swing that groaned under us every summer evening. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe, and it was mine. Ours. At least that's what Martha always said. But the older I got, the louder the whispers became. She's just biding her time. I hope she knows she's not in the will. God, Martha's gone soft. I tried to ignore it. I really did, but it got harder when family events came with side eyes and empty chairs beside me. When cousins got checks for Christmas and I got socks. When even the pastor at church asked if I was Martha's sponsored child. They never let me forget. But Martha never let me fall. She'd smile and say, "Let them talk. One day, they'll wish they'd been kind." I didn't know what she meant back then. Not really. But I was about to find out. Because years later, when Martha got sick, everything changed. The vultures circled. And the girl they once called not one of us? She was about to become the only one who mattered. I wish I could say Martha's illness came out of nowhere. But truthfully, it crept in like fog. Slow, stubborn, and impossible to ignore once it settled. At first, it was little things. She'd forget where she put the sugar. Call me twice in one morning, thinking she hadn't spoken to me yet. Then she started mixing up names. Called me Lisa once. Lisa was her late sister. I took her to the doctor. They ran tests, asked questions, did scans. The verdict came a week later in a cold beige room filled with humming fluorescent lights. Early stage dementia. I remember gripping her hand so tightly my knuckles cracked. But Martha? She just nodded. Calm, like someone being told the weather forecast. When we got home, she sat in her favorite chair by the window, took a deep breath, and said, "Well, I've lived a full life. Now we make plans." And just like that, the calls started. Not from doctors or caregivers, from them. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. aunts who never remembered my birthday. Even Sarah, smug Sarah, showed up at the door with a box of store-bought cookies and crocodile tears in her eyes. "I just wanted to see how Aunt Martha's doing," she said, stepping past me without waiting for permission. Suddenly, Martha mattered to them again, and they made sure I knew it. I watched as they sat next to her, holding her hand, talking sweetly. But when they thought I wasn't listening, they'd ask things like, "Has she updated her will yet?" You know, it's probably best if someone close to the family helps manage her affairs. And the one that nearly made me throw the tea kettle, "Does she still think that girl's her daughter?" That girl was me. And yes, she did. But it didn't stop them. They brought brochures for senior homes, left voicemails suggesting Martha might be safer with more professional care. They even whispered about power of attorney, thinking they could slip in and take over before anyone noticed. But they underestimated Martha. One evening, after everyone had left, I found her sitting at the dining table with a man in a suit. His briefcase was open. Papers were spread out in front of them. She looked at me and smiled. "Lena, this is Mr. Chandler. He's my lawyer. We're just tying up some loose ends." I blinked. "Are you changing your will?" She nodded. "I'm finalizing it." My heart stopped. My throat burned with dread. But before I could spiral, she reached over, took my hand, and whispered, "Don't worry. I haven't forgotten who's been here all along." I didn't ask more. I didn't need to. I trusted her. But that didn't stop the others. They came more often, stayed longer, started bringing little gifts, hand lotions, scarves, framed pictures from better days. One cousin brought flowers and casually asked if Martha still had the deed to the house in her name. "It's just, paperwork can get confusing at her age," she said. Every single visit was a performance. Fake smiles, overdone affection, and beneath it all, a shared hunger for her house, for her savings, for whatever scraps they thought they could claw away once she was gone. I tried to shield her, but Martha, she saw through it all. And one day, after a particularly exhausting visit, she sat up straighter and said, "You know what, Lena? Let's give them something to talk about." I didn't know what she meant. Not until the day Mr. Chandler called again, this time to schedule a reading, because Martha had written her final words, and the last line would turn their world upside down. The week before Martha passed felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane, calm on the surface, but the wind, those undercurrents of greed and desperation, howled just outside the door. They came more frequently now, brought casseroles, scented candles, prayer cards. They touched her cheeks, fussed over her pillows, and took pictures as if framing memories. But every smile hid a countdown, and I knew it. One afternoon, I caught Sarah in Martha's bedroom, rifling through her jewelry drawer. When I stepped in, she jumped like she'd seen a ghost. "Oh, I was just looking for tissues," she stammered, holding a silk pouch in her hand. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, then at the pouch. She set it down and brushed past me. Later that night, Martha asked, "Did she take anything?" I didn't answer. She smiled faintly. "Doesn't matter. It was never about the things, Lena. It's about who's still here at the end." The night before Martha passed, we sat on the porch swing one last time. She was thinner, quieter. Her voice barely a whisper, but her grip was still strong when she held my hand. "Don't fight them," she said. "Don't argue, just wait." "Wait for what?" She smiled. "For the lawyer." When she slipped away, it wasn't dramatic. No gasping or final gasp, just stillness, like a soft exhale into the world. And suddenly, my world cracked open. The funeral was small, just the way she wanted it. I gave a short eulogy. Sarah didn't clap, neither did the others. But they cried the loudest, made the biggest show of placing flowers, took photos beside the casket. One even asked if they could live stream the service. Disgust doesn't even begin to describe it. But I stayed silent, not out of fear, because Martha had asked me to, because I knew something was coming. And I was right. 2 weeks after the funeral, Mr. Chandler called. His voice was steady, clipped, all business. "We'll be gathering at Martha's residence this Saturday for the reading of her will." I was quiet. She insisted it happen in the house. Her exact words were, "I want to see their faces one last time." That Saturday, they arrived dressed to impress. You'd think it was a brunch. Dresses, jewelry. One cousin even wore stilettos. They smiled, but you could feel the tension in the room. Everyone was waiting, buzzing with questions they didn't want to ask out loud. Was the house up for grabs? Was there a trust? Had she changed anything? Sarah gave me a cold smile. I guess we'll finally see what she thought of all of us. I smiled back. Yes, we will. Mr. Chandler stood at the center of the living room, beside the fireplace Martha loved. He opened his briefcase, took out a thick envelope, and broke the seal. "This is the last will and testament of Martha Jane Ellison, signed and notarized. I'll read it word for word, as per her instructions." Silence fell. No one breathed, and as he began, so did the unraveling. She named every single one of them, one by one, and gave them nothing. No jewelry, no money, not even the photo albums. Instead, each name was followed by a brutally honest sentence. To Sarah, for the lies, the theft, and the performance of grief, you are forgiven, but not rewarded. To Janice, for ignoring every birthday, every call, and only appearing for inheritance, may you find peace elsewhere. And so on. Brutal. Beautiful. Martha's voice echoed in every word, until finally, Mr. Chandler looked at me. To Lena, the daughter of my heart, the reason I kept going. To her I leave everything. The house, the land, the savings account, the letters, the truth. She is my legacy. A beat, a silence so sharp it could slice air. Then Mr. Chandler turned the page and said, and the last line, requested to be read aloud with everyone present. He cleared his throat. If you are hearing this and you ever said out loud or even thought, why would she adopt her? Then know this, I adopted her because she was the only one worth calling family. There was a gasp. Maybe two. I looked around, and every single face was pale. The silence after that final line wasn't just awkward. It was devastating. You could practically hear their egos shatter on the hardwood floor. Sarah blinked fast like she was trying to cry, but no tears came. Janice's jaw locked. A few of the cousins exchanged looks, waiting for someone else to speak first, like they needed a designated spokesperson to handle the embarrassment. I just sat there, still, calm. Because that moment? That was for every time they rolled their eyes when I entered a room, for every whispered joke, for every time they told me I was lucky Martha had taken me in, as if I was a stray dog scratching at the door. Mr. Chandler finished his reading and began sorting the paperwork. You'll each receive a written copy of the will, but the execution of all assets will be immediate, he said matter-of-factly. The house, savings, belongings, all are legally transferred to Lena Ellison. My name never sounded so powerful, and then came the questions. But wait, Janice finally burst out. This doesn't make sense. Martha wouldn't just cut us all out. I mean, we're her family. Chandler raised an eyebrow. Legally, she named only one heir. That was her wish. I was with her personally when this will was drafted, reviewed, and signed. Any contesting would be very difficult and expensive. Sarah crossed her arms, her voice tight with disbelief. She was probably confused when she wrote this. It should be reviewed. It's not... She looked at me with pure venom. It's not fair. I met her stare without blinking. What's fair is being there when it mattered. That shut her up. They all lingered a while longer, as if waiting for the script to change, as if someone was going to yell, "Just kidding, here's your share." But no one did. They came hungry, and they were leaving empty-handed. I could see it unraveling in their eyes. the plan, the greed, the entitlement. All those years of pretending, positioning, smiling through gritted teeth, gone in a single sentence. One cousin had the nerve to pull me aside before leaving. "You could share some of it. That house is too big for just you. We're family, Lena." Family. Now the word mattered to them. I didn't reply. I just walked them to the door. I held it open wide. And when the last one stepped out, I said, "Martha adopted me because she saw the truth before the rest of you even looked." And then I closed it. I leaned against the door, heart pounding, not from guilt, not from fear, but from the quiet, earth-shaking realization that I was finally free. Free from their judgment, their pity, their backhanded compliments, their assumption that love had to be blood-bound to count. The next day I stood in the middle of the living room, Martha's living room, and let the silence wrap around me. No more hushed voices, no more watching my back, no more pretending to be grateful just for being allowed to exist. I opened the windows. A breeze swept in, and I whispered, "We did it, Mom," because that's what she was. Not just legally, not just in passing. She was my mother. And now, her house was mine. But Martha hadn't just left me bricks and furniture. She left me something else, something I wasn't expecting. In a sealed envelope tucked in the drawer of her writing desk was a letter. And once I opened it, the story I thought had ended took a turn I never saw coming. The envelope was thick, yellowed at the edges, and sealed with a piece of lavender wax, Martha's favorite scent. My name was written in her looping cursive, steady and elegant, even in the face of her decline. Lena, that's all it said. I stared at it for a long while. My hands trembled as I held it, not out of fear, but reverence. I had already received her home, her savings, her words of defiance against the people who tried to erase me. I thought that was the end of the story, but this letter, this was something else. I opened it slowly as if time would stretch long enough to prepare me. Inside was 3 pages, handwritten, no date, no title, just, "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you know what I've done." But there's more you need to know, because the truth isn't just about who you are to me. It's also about who you were before me. I blinked. My throat dried. You were never a burden, Lena. You were never a favor, but you were also never just a random child in the system. I need to tell you something I never said before. I had to sit down. Your mother was my student. A bright girl with a wild spirit and eyes full of fight. Her name was Valerie. She was 15 when she had you, and she was terrified. Her parents threw her out. She had nowhere to go. My stomach twisted. I had spent most of my life thinking I'd never know anything about my biological family. They told me I'd been abandoned at the hospital, left with no note, no name, just another lost case. But Martha had known. She came to me once shaking, holding you in a blanket far too thin for winter. She asked me to take care of you, just until she got her life together. But she never came back, and when I tried to find her, she had vanished. No records, no family, no trace. My hands trembled harder. I didn't adopt you out of pity, Lena. I adopted you because I loved you. From the second I held you, I knew. You weren't someone's mistake. You were someone's miracle. And when no one else came for you, I did. Tears blurred the page. I clutched it to my chest. But there was more. There's one more thing. In the bottom drawer of my nightstand, taped beneath the base, is a small metal box. Inside, you'll find everything I've ever learned about your birth mother. Where she might have gone. The investigator's notes. Photos, names. I didn't want to overwhelm you before, but now, it's yours to decide. I ran to the bedroom, fell to my knees beside the nightstand, opened the drawer, removed the liner, and there it was, a small gray lockbox, cool to the touch. Inside were documents, photos, receipts, faded snapshots of a young girl with fiery red hair holding a baby, me. Her eyes looked scared, but proud. And then I understood. Martha didn't just save me, she preserved my truth until I was strong enough to face it. The house was a gift. The letter? That was my inheritance. Suddenly, the words they used to cut me down, "Why would she adopt you?" felt ridiculous, because I wasn't a stranger. I wasn't a mistake. I was the continuation of a story they never even knew existed, a story of women who refused to give up. I sat for hours that night, going through every page, every clue, every thread. And by morning, I made a decision. I was going to find Valerie, not because I needed her to love me, not because I lacked a mother, but because I deserved to know. Martha had given me strength, a home, a name, and now, a choice. And I wasn't going to waste it. The first few steps were mechanical, scanning the files, piecing together addresses, dates, timelines. Martha had done most of the work already. She had tracked down shelters, written letters, hired a private investigator more than once. I found receipts tucked in the corner of the lockbox from a firm called White River Agency, dated back nearly 15 years. She never told me, never even hinted. Among the papers was a single name, circled in red ink, Valerie K. Thomas, a photocopied license, expired, an old address listed 2 towns over from where Martha and I had lived. I followed the trail. I took a day off work, got in my car, and drove. Not because I had expectations. Honestly, I didn't know what I'd say if I found her. I just needed to see something, a place, a perso. I arrived at a small town just past the edge of the county line. Not much more than a few diners, a gas station, and a string of worn-out apartments along a broken road called East Maple Drive. Her last known address was Unit 2B. I climbed the stairs, my stomach in knots, rehearsing 100 different versions of an introduction. "Hi, my name is Lena. You don't know me, but..." Or, "I think we're connected somehow." Maybe just, "I'm your daughter." But when I knocked, there was no answer. The hallway smelled like mildew. A neighbor peeked out from across the hall and asked, "You looking for Valerie?" I nodded, unsure how to speak. The woman adjusted her glasses, her expression soft. "She passed, about 6 months ago." I froze. 6 months. 6 months ago, Martha was still alive, still holding that secret. "She died alone," the woman added, "in her sleep. Quiet, I think. She didn't talk much to anyone, but she used to keep a photo of a baby in a locket, said it was her biggest regret and her biggest hope." I swallowed hard. Did she have any belongings left behind? The woman tilted her head. They cleared the place, but her landlord boxed up a few things. I think he still keeps them in the basement, never threw them out. Wait here. She disappeared down the hall. I stood there, gripping the handrail, heart pounding. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I wasn't supposed to be too late. But then again, I wasn't empty-handed. The woman returned with a cardboard box. "He said if anyone ever came asking, maybe this was meant for you." Inside were a few clothes, old books, and a small tin, like the kind people used to keep recipes in. I lifted the lid. Inside were notes, letters, crumpled drafts, tear-stained pages, all addressed to my baby girl. Some were dated, others weren't. Some were written in pen, others scrawled in pencil or on napkins and receipts. "I'm sorry I left you. I thought I was doing the right thing. I didn't know how to be a mother then, but I prayed someone would love you better than I could. I hope she did." I couldn't breathe. "I think of you every birthday. I wonder if you still have red hair, if you know you're beautiful, if someone told you how smart you are. I hope whoever has you tells you every day." I sank to the floor, the tin pressed to my chest, crying quietly in a stranger's hallway. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a reunion. It was more complicated than any storybook ending, but it was real. I whispered, "She did tell me. Every day. Valerie hadn't disappeared because she didn't care. She vanished because she did, because she believed I could have a better life if she let go. And somehow, both of them were right. Martha had raised me with love. Valerie had released me with hope. I was the bridge between two women who never met, but somehow saved each other through me. That night I returned to Martha's house. My house now. I placed Valerie's letters in a drawer beside Martha's will. 2 mothers, 2 legacies, and a daughter they refused to let the world break. After finding Valerie's letters, I felt something strange. It wasn't grief, exactly. It wasn't triumph, either. It was wholeness. Like a puzzle piece had finally clicked into place, one I didn't even know was missing until it fit. Back at the house, I unpacked the last of the moving boxes and cleaned out the guest room. Not for guests, just for peace. I repainted the walls in a color Martha would have hated, a deep navy, and replaced the old curtains with something light and linen. The home was still hers, but now it was becoming mine too. And that's when the texts started again. From Sarah. "Can we talk? Just us? I think we got off on the wrong foot. It's not about the money, it's about family." That last one made me laugh out loud, but it didn't end there. A week later, there was a knock at the door. I looked through the peephole. Sarah, Janice, and a cousin I didn't even recognize anymore, all in black again, as if mourning would get them sympathy, or maybe guilt me into opening the door. This time, I did. I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. No way was I letting them inside my house. Sarah smiled too wide. "Hi, Lena. We've been thinking." "Careful. That sounds dangerous," I said. Janice cleared her throat. "We understand that Martha made her choices, but we thought maybe we could share. I mean, the house is big and you don't have a family of your own, right?" She said it like a kindness, but her eyes said, "You were never supposed to win." I didn't flinch. "I have 2 mothers," I said quietly. "One who raised me, one who gave me life. That's more family than you ever gave me." They shifted, caught off guard. "I'm not here to argue," Sarah added. "We just think, for the sake of peace, you could reconsider. I mean, we're blood." I smiled. For the first time, I really smiled. "Let me tell you something," I said, stepping closer so they had to hear every word. "When I was 11, you told people I was just using Martha to get a house someday, that I wasn't one of you. You made sure I always felt like an outsider. Well, guess what?" I pulled out the house deed from my back pocket, the one Mr. Chandler had handed me the day of the will reading. I held it up. "I'm not one of you, and thank God for that." Janice looked like she'd swallowed glass. Sarah's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. I continued, voice steady. "This house? Every tile, every wall, every creak in the floorboards? She left it to me. Not because I'm blood, but because I was loyal. Because I loved her without expectation. And that, apparently, is something none of you know how to do." "Lena." "No," I cut in, soft but firm. "You had years to treat her like family. You had years to treat me like family. You wasted them, and now you're here, not for closure, but because you're scared you'll never get another piece of her." I folded the deed and slipped it back in my jacket. "You're right." They stared at me. I nodded once. "You won't." I turned and walked back to the door, slow, intentional. Before stepping inside, I added, "If you want a piece of Martha, try kindness next time. She kept every card, every thank you note, every laugh I ever gave her. That's more inheritance than any of you could handle." And then I closed the door. They never came back. I stood in the foyer, sunlight pouring in through the stained glass window, and felt the quiet wrap around me. Not lonely this time. Safe, loved, chosen. Enough. But just when I thought the story was over, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address. Handwritten. Fragile. Inside was a photo of Valerie, standing beside a woman I didn't recognize. On the back it said, "There's something else you should know." The photo was old, grainy, the kind you'd find tucked inside a family Bible or between the pages of a worn novel. Valerie stood on the left, her red hair unmistakable even in black and white. She was younger than I expected, maybe late teens, with her arm around a woman in a floral dress, older, sharper features, a wide grin frozen in time. They looked happy, real, like a snapshot of something genuine in a life full of loss. But it was the writing on the back that made my breath catch. There's something else you should know. No signature, no explanation. Just that sentence, that quiet disruption. At first I thought it was a mistake, maybe someone else's mail, but the envelope had my name, my full name, handwritten in the same looping cursive Martha used. I turned the photo over again. I couldn't let it go, so I called Mr. Chandler. "Can you check something for me?" I asked. He agreed to meet the next day. We sat in his small office, surrounded by books and ledgers. I handed him the photo and the note. He studied it for a long time. Then he stood, walked to a filing cabinet, and pulled out a folder I hadn't seen before. "I didn't want to overwhelm you right after the will," he said, placing it on the desk. "But Martha left this too, told me to give it to you if anything else ever arrived." I stared at the folder like it might burst into flames. Inside was a letter, typed. "Lena, if this is being delivered, then someone out there is still holding on to the past. Let me give you the rest of it, so no shadows remain. The woman in the photo is your grandmother, Valerie's mother. Her name was Judith. She's the one who forced Valerie to give you up. She called you a mistake, kicked Valerie out when she refused to have an abortion. But here's the twist." I leaned in, reading faster. "Years later, Judith came to see me. After I adopted you, she begged to be let back into Valerie's life, but I refused. I told her what she had done was unforgivable, that she had no place near you. She cried, said she didn't know better back then, that she thought she was protecting Valerie, that she regretted everything. I didn't let her in. Maybe that was harsh, but I needed you to grow up surrounded by love, not confusion. Still, if she's reached out again, it's your choice now." At the bottom was a final line, handwritten in blue ink. "Choose forgiveness if you wish, but never choose silence again. Your voice, Lena, is your inheritance too." I sat back in the chair, stunned. The photo, the note, the tangled threads of 3 generations of women, pulled tight, then slowly unraveled into something real, something painfully human. Martha had protected me with everything she had. Valerie had loved me silently from a distance. And now, Judith, a woman I never knew, never wanted to know, had tried, however clumsily, to return. It should have made me angry, but it didn't. Because I finally understood what it meant to hold your own story in your hands. I walked home that night with the photo pressed to my chest. Back at the house, I lit a candle in the window, a soft little ritual Martha had always done when she was waiting for someone she loved to come home, whether they ever did or not. I placed the photo beside it, not to rewrite the past, not to erase the hurt, but to honor every woman who had shaped me, flawed, fierce, and full of fight. And then I sat at Martha's old writing desk, pulled out a pen, and started writing my own letter. To the little girl who thinks she doesn't belong, let me tell you something. Family isn't who names you. It's who never stops saying your name when you're not in the room. And when they ask, "Why would she adopt you?" you say, "Because I was worth it. Every damn bit of it."